Good morning. It is time for Art in the AM, and my name is Jamie. If this is your first time watching, I have been doing live videos here on this page since April 1st of 2020, so over 6 years. Every Monday, at the beginning, I was doing like Monday through Friday, then Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So Monday is the day that I've kind of chosen that I continue to do the live videos, and I have been going through the ABCs of art. And we're going through the second round of the ABCs, so that today's letter is the letter H. And I'm just kind of sharing some art words that may not necessarily be ones that you hear about, learn about in a painting class, in a, just something that you may take here online or even watch online. And it's just a way for me to be able to share a little bit more in depth, a little bit more than, I won't say just painting, but more than the process itself. I am an art teacher. I have taught at the high school level, at the elementary level, sometimes at the middle school level, but high school is where I taught the most. And I love teaching art history and the elements and principles of art and things beyond the process itself. So for the letter H, I am going to be talking about a word that really is kind of like an underlying word in all of art. So for the letter H, I thought that I would talk about harmony. And you've heard the word harmony. You probably have kind of an understanding of like what that means, harmonious, it's all pleasing. I always think of just like, it's we're all like kumbaya. Yeah, I don't know, that's what I kind of think of. Like everything is just harmonious. There's no conflict. There's no things that don't go together, that don't belong. That's how I kind of think of harmonious. And it's not that much different in art. It's just in the way that you pull everything together. So there's a lot of different ways that I could talk about harmony. And I'm actually going to do it in reference to how to make a painting harmonious. And there's one in particular way, without going, too far into a bunch of details and different techniques and things like that. But there's one specific way that I'm going to teach you today about making your paintings harmonious. Really any artwork, but I'm going to use paint. So I have 6 bottles of paint over here on my 7 bottles of paint over here on my table. And I think I'm just going to pick a couple of them. I'll look over here and be able to see. But I've actually been doing this the past couple of days in my portrait studies, if you've been watching those. I completed, I think, number 143 yesterday. And there are definitely a couple of ways that I've been using harmony. And I've been, the things that I do are because I know that they will make a harmonious portrait. And the paint is what I have started with on at least the past couple, and then I'll tell you some of the things that I, other materials. Because, as you know, I like to use all different kinds of media, not just paint. Sometimes I will start with paint, and then I'll add some other things. So let me just kind of give you like a quick definition of harmony, like as it relates to art. So I wrote down, it is different elements. And if you watched last year during the, the word of the week is what I called it. I went through all of the elements of art. So color, line, shape, form, and all the other elements. I think there are 9 elements. And I don't have that book over here with me of the elements. But harmony is taking all of those different elements that would be in a piece of artwork and having them come together so that they're pleasing, orderly, cohesive. I love that cohesive word. And that they belong together so that they're unified. I really kind of think of harmony and being unified very similar. Harmony to me kind of makes it sound like the colors in particular go together, but unified is like everything, all of the elements, all of those together. So that's kind of like the definition, which is very similar to the word harmony in relation to anything else. It's just using the elements of art. So if you didn't watch last year, I do have all of those videos for the word of the week on my YouTube in a playlist for the word of the week. And I went through a whole series doing all of the elements and all of the principles of art. Those are the foundation of what I taught at the high school level, what was taught to me at the college level. They are the foundation of everything. And the one probably that you're most familiar with is color. So that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So here is how I'm going to teach you about harmony. And I'm going to be working in my watercolor book. The one that I did last week about gradation, I did post this picture. So I'm going to be doing it on the next page here. And I didn't really have like an image that I wanted to paint. So let me think really quickly about, I want to have something that has multiple, my poor dog is whining right by my door here, because my husband isn't here to play with him. So he's over here like whining. So I'm kind of looking for something. Oh, maybe this will be my inspiration here. Looking for something to, like a subject to be able to paint. And here's what I'm going to teach you about harmony. And you can tell me if you have ever heard of this before. And it is the idea of doing a mother color, And it is the way, when I think about how I create harmony in a lot of the artwork that I do, I essentially use either a mother color, or I use like an undercoating color, which to me is kind of a unifying color. So I have an image that I'm going to use here as inspiration, this little coffee cup here, because it has a couple of different things, you know, the table and the cup and then the background. And so I'm going to use that for inspiration, just to have something to paint. And I may draw it on to this first. Let me make sure yep. So I may draw it on here. But let me show you the past two portraits that I did and how I kind of use this idea of a mother color, or a kind of like a unifying color. So this one is the first one that I wanted to show to you that I did a couple days ago. And I'll talk about this side after, but look at this side first, because this is the side that I used an undercoating of this peachy pink color. And it was actually this Neon Lights peach punch. That's hard to say, but it's kind of like a peachy pink color. So I used that in the background. So that color was over the entire page. I like doing that so the paper's not white. That's one reason, but it unifies everything. It makes things feel harmonious and that they all work together. That's really what harmony is about, right? And what I used along, you know, after I did the base color is other colors related to that peach punch kind of color. So I used like different markers that were in that range. And that's how I got really the gradation, like I taught last week about how I got these different values and things in there. The portraits are something that I only teach inside of my Start Creating mixed media membership that I have, and I'm actually doing one today at 2 o'clock, and it's a live portrait demo that I just like on the spot just do, and it allows my members to see the process, like the whole creative process from start to finish, because it's not a tutorial necessarily as much as it is just a start to finish them seeing in real time. A lot of times I don't have a plan beforehand. It's exactly how I'm working in this journal here. So this side over here, I had limited colors, and it's not necessarily an underlying color, an undercoating of a color like this one was, but I did start with just 3 or 4 colors, and what I did is I started mixing them and getting a mother color, and that's what I'm gonna teach you about. This one I just wanted to show. This was the one that I just did yesterday, and I loved this technique. I may actually do a version of this today in the Start Creating membership to show how I got that texture, to show how really the portrait itself, there's not that much that I added to it. And I love the texture and everything in there. But this one, the underlying color is what ties it all together. It makes it harmonious. So those are the two that I wanted to show to you. So let me get my pencil, and I am going to draw kind of this coffee cup on here, and I am not going to be able to draw it upside down, so you won't really even be able to see it until I start kind of painting it in and showing you about the mother color. But I'm going to be working for you upside down so that I'm kind of like looking, and I like to use some kind of a reference for just about anything that I do. I may change it up, but I like to have a starting point. It helps me so that I don't have to feel like it's the blank page. I already have kind of like a starting point because I have an image, and then I'll just like change it up afterwards. So I am drawing just kind of like this idea of a coffee cup. I may change up the shape of the coffee cup a little bit, but it'll give me a chance to put some coffee in there and use some different colors and show you about the idea of a mother color. Tell me if you've ever heard that word before. Are you familiar with the idea of a mother color? I have heard people call it kind of other things too. Mother color is just like what I have been familiar with. And I'm trying to think of who I first heard that from. And I don't know that I remember where I first heard it. So I'm going to do a handle. I'm kind of doing more of like a tea cup than a coffee cup. This handle here looks like an ear. It's so funny. And it has this vase of flowers. I might just do, I do want something over there, so I think I'm just going to have a vase maybe like with one flower in there. What do they call that? Like a bud vase? And I'm really changing up the flower since I'm only putting one in here. Actually, this kind of gives me an idea here. My flower is kind of right over top of the coffee cup, the teacup. I don't know, I'm kind of seeing maybe something where I could have a cup like this where the flower, the colors of the flower are dripping into the cup somehow. I don't know. Just trying to kind of get the shape there of the, I don't even think I'm going to put any leaves in. It's not lined up exactly on there. And I don't even know if you can, I kind of did, oh, what's this type of flower? A cone flower, you know, kind of the, and then I have the coffee cup over here, you'll be able to see. So now I have it drawn on there, I can flip it around. I kind of drew over, like I drew the table line first, and so now I'm going through and kind of erasing like where that table line is. Okay, so I have just a couple of colors, and I think that I'm going to try to limit it to just these couple of colors. So I have a yellow flame. I think that I'm going to use this brick red. It's kind of a brownish red, really, right? And then I think that I'm going to use this periwinkle color. And if you look at those three colors, they're essentially the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. And I have found that to be true, that if you have some kind of combination of like a red, yellow, and a blue, you can really make a lot of different colors from just those three. I may use a little bit of this fawn color, but I'm going to see if I can't get maybe a close color by mixing some of those together. I think that I will. I think I'm just going to leave it to those three, but I do think that I'm going to use this vanilla color just to have a lighter version. So I am using this well-loved little palette here. This is one of the larger cutting boards from the Dollar Tree that I use quite a bit. So this is a full one of those cutting boards, and then I just cut it in half. And it works really well for a palette because then I can just scrape all of this off, and it works for me to put in my journals so that I can protect like the edges of the painting. But today I'm going to use it as a palette. So here's the idea of the mother color. I'm going to take all three of these colors, and I'm just going to take a little bit. I don't think that I'll even need very much of any of these. And I'm going to put them on my palette, leaving a little bit of room. And I'll probably have some white, or the vanilla, in there too. Got some dried up little pieces there. See if I can, there we go. And you could use a palette knife for this. I'm just going to use my brush. But what I'm going to do is take a little bit of each of these paints right in the middle here, about the same amount of each one. And when I mix that together, that is my mother color. And it's kind of this really nice kind of grayish color. I may use that for this, the the steam. The reason that this works is because it has all three of the colors that you're using already mixed into it. And that helps to make it harmonious. So anytime that you're wanting to create like shadows and more like neutral colors, try mixing some of the colors that you already have together, that you already are using, especially if it's a combination of red, yellow, and blue, because you'll probably get some kind of neutral color that you could use for that. And you can create glazes with it. You can create lighter versions of it with the white. You can add a little bit of black and darken it. You can have a color that helps to make it all look like it goes together. And that is what the mother color is for. So I'm going to rinse out my brush and use some of these colors. I think I'm going to use the this periwinkle color to do the teacup, and then you'll be able to see this periwinkle. I know that it's a Deco Art paint, but it really covers up nicely. And I'm going to do the whole mug in this color, and then I'm going to show you how I can use some of the other colors to make it harmonious. I can add a little bit of the vanilla to it. But you can see I kind of changed the mug so it wasn't, it was more like rectangular in the inspiration photo that I used. And then I want just a little bit kind of back in here. I think I'm going to go ahead and come up and do this little rim here. And then in the center, kind of in here, where it would be rounded and this would be kind of closer, I'm going to not even wash off my brush because I want a little bit of that periwinkle in there. And while this is still wet, I'm going to come in and add a little bit of that vanilla in there. And then I'm just kind of blending it a little bit more into the sides here. And that just starts to make my mug look a little more rounded. And then probably I'll come back in and add a little bit more in the center there. I might have to wait for it to dry just a little bit in there. I'll try adding. So far I've only used just the one color. I've just used I'm going to do a little bit on the mug here and maybe just like a little bit back in the back there. And I still have some of this paint on here, and I know that this is going to sound like, what are you doing? But sometimes I will just take whatever paint I have on my paintbrush and I will just put it into my painting. Even if I don't know that I'm going to keep it there, it starts to add a little bit of this color in other places in my painting. And that will also make your painting harmonious. I am going to paint in the coffee using the brick red. I might put a little, yeah, that's kind of, I don't like my coffee that bright. I'm going to mix a little bit of the vanilla in there. So I just kind of picked up the vanilla. And I'm going to go ahead and mix a little bit of, oh yeah, that's much better, the yellow that I had. And so right there I have all three of my colors that I've been using, that I have on my palette. That works pretty well for a coffee kind of a color. And I'm going to wait for this to dry. I'm I don't know, just put a little bit of kind of vanilla in there, like there's like creamer, you know, kind of like in there. And then I have a little bit of that color on here, so I'm going to do that kind of in the background here. And there's really, you know, a lot of color that comes off in there. And then I kind of like rinse it out just to get like the rest out. So I'm going to go ahead and do this flower since I really don't have the colors of like what a cone flower would be. It's going to be more of like a daisy. Or not a daisy, because that wouldn't be, I don't know. We're doing, it's going to have yellow petals. And then I'm going to come in with some of the vanilla. So far, I've still only used just these 4 colors. And you know, whenever you have like a limited palette, it kind of forces you to like learn how those colors mix together and what colors you can make from those. And you know, a lot of artists work with kind of a more limited, you know, kind of palette. And then I have some yellow on there, so I'm just going to take and put some of that. I'm not sure what color I'm going to do the vase yet. I might try mixing the brick red and the periwinkle together and add some white and kind of see what kind of color I can get. And I'm not sure about the plate yet. That might just be like a really pale kind of a yellow. And I'm going to try to mix the yellow and the periwinkle together and see if I can get some kind of a green. Let me go ahead and do that. So this is going to be that brick red kind of color. And I'm going to wait for that to dry, but that is definitely one of the places where I'm going to come in with the mother color. And then I have a little bit of this, which is going to be more of like a shadow. So I'm going to come in and do a little bit of that. And then we'll go ahead and put some in here. So far, I've still only used 3 colors. I'm going to try the periwinkle and the yellow and see if I can get kind of a greenish color. Oh, actually, that's not too bad. It's kind of like a grayish green color because I added a little bit of the brick red to it. And I could add some of the mother color to it too, but I'm going to use that more when I do like the shadows. That is actually a really nice green color. And I don't have any place else that have planned to put the green, but I do definitely want to have some of this green somewhere else on the painting. So I'm going to come into like this plate down here. And I'm not sure what color I'm going to do the table yet. So I'll put a little bit of that green in there. So let's see what kind of color I can get for the vase over here. I'm going to try the brick red and the periwinkle color. I think that it's going to make a little bit more of a neutral. Let's see what I can... I don't want any of the yellow in there because that would neutralize it too much. I think that it's going to kind of read purple. We'll see when I put it on here. It's kind of a nice... you know, anytime that you're mixing red, yellow, and blue, right, you're going to get kind of more of a neutralized kind of a color. And that's what I'm kind of getting with this purple. Even though I don't have yellow in there, the periwinkle and that brick red are not true primary colors, so they're going to be a little bit more muted. It's kind of like a nice, I don't know what kind of purple you would call that, but I kind of like it. I like a little, just a little bit of that brick red kind of mixed in there too. And I'll definitely, I kind of like the texture in there where the watercolor paper is just like really textured in there. So I think that I'm gonna leave that a little bit. I kind of have everything like laid out in here, and what I'm gonna start doing now is, I didn't paint any of this anywhere else, so I probably need to come in and do that. This is pretty close to the mother color without some of the yellow in there, so I feel like I'm going to have more of that kind of in places. I'm going to come into the saucer down here, and I'm going into the vanilla, but it already has some of this brick red and the green in there. And this is pretty opaque, so I'm gonna paint it on here and see. It's kind of covering up a little bit more, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water to make it not quite as opaque, so I can see a little bit of that coming through. And that's something you can do if you want some of your undercoating to show through. Just add a little bit of water, or add a little bit of oh my gosh, what's the word that I want to paint extender, but that, I don't know if that's the word that I'm the right word that I'm thinking of. So in some places I'm kind of adding a little bit more of the vanilla, and some I'm letting some of that show through a little bit. And I'm going to come through with the mother color kind of in there, and I'm really going to use the mother color to define and have some of the darker values, because like right now this is the darkest, but I know like in the coffee mug and different things I want to have some of those darker colors. I'm going to let that dry probably and come back in with the like just straight vanilla to kind of highlight in there too. So I think I'm going to make the table a little bit like the greenish color that I made, maybe a little bit more yellow. So it's kind of a yellowish green. It's still going to, and I probably add a little bit of water to it. It's still going to go with everything that I have on here, because even though I don't have that any place, I have this green. It's just, kind of like a lighter version of the green. Add a little bit of water to it so that I can still see a little bit of that brick red that I wanted for kind of highlights or shadows down in there. And just by doing that and kind of defining that saucer a little bit more by painting the table, kind of rounded out that and define where that saucer is. And I'm still seeing a little bit of the blue back there. So you can see that, you know, I just took that image of that coffee cup and kind of, now I'm painting it completely different. I mean, now it looks nothing like the colors or anything that I have on there. It was just a way to help me get started. It was just a way for me not to have a blank page. And once I kind of, you know, get to the point where I have something and I can refer back to the coffee, that coffee cup image if I want for, you know, reference for shadows if I wanted or something like that. But for the most part now, I'm, you know, now I'm creating my own painting. So definitely, you know, use things for a reference, but then at some point realize that you don't have to copy what it is. You can start to create your own painting and just use it for reference if you want to know where the shadows are, where the light is coming in, or things like that. But you don't necessarily need to use it to copy. You know? That's how I have been using a lot of my portraits. I'll start with a reference, but then I'll just, at some point it becomes my piece of artwork and not what I'm copying. Look how interesting and harmonious this table is, because this table has a little bit of all of the colors and it ties in this green down into there, but I can see bits of the blue coming through. I can see bits of the rust color coming through. So that's not necessarily all three of them mixed together, but I can see a little bit of all three kind of coming in there. And that was because I kind of put those colors down as I was painting. Anytime that you can have something that is not just a flat color, it's just going to be more interesting. I think in the background here, I'm going to just do a really pale yellow. So I'm going to have a lot of the yellow and a little bit of the white. And I'm going to add water. So I just kind of dip my paintbrush in the water so I have it on my paintbrush. And even though the petals are yellow, that is where I'm going to start to use the mother color to kind of define those and separate those. I think I'm going to mix even more white in there though. So it's almost kind of like a lemony, pale, like really pale yellow. I could probably use a bigger paintbrush. That would help too. And I have a little bit of that rust color back there, so that's adding some interest. Can't forget in between the mug there. And I'll probably come back in and even lighten this even more, but I'll show you how I'm going to do the petals. I hope that you try this. I hope that you have an understanding that even with limited colors, you can create something that is harmonious because you've limited your colors. And it really starts to teach you how to mix colors, and just seeing, you know, would I have ever thought of using periwinkle and yellow to get that green color? I don't know that I would have, but I really like that kind of like muted down green by mixing those two together, that I don't know that I ever would have thought about using if I wouldn't have really challenged myself to just use a few colors. I think I am going to come in and make more of that flower white. So like yellow is kind of the underlying color, but maybe it will be more like a daisy. I'm going to get more of the vanilla. And I'm just kind of coming in with just even some of the vanilla. And the vanilla is pretty opaque, and I was feeling like this stem was a little bit wide, so I kind of came in and cleaned that up a little bit. A little bit of that yellow in there. So I'm going to come in with just the vanilla and make these a little thicker paint. And make it a little bit more like a daisy. And I didn't paint anything kind of right in here, so I'm going to paint that in. And so basically I have everything painted in. So I want to show you how I'm going to use the mother color, and I'm going to show you a couple of other supplies of how I could finish this off really with more of a mixed media kind of approach. So if I look at my sample one, or my inspiration, I can definitely see on the edges of the mug there are darker values. So I'm taking my kind of mother color grayish, and I'm going to put a little bit of that on the edges and then kind of mix that in. So I will show you. So I'm kind of like feathering that in a little bit, and I'm going to see if I can get just a, I could probably use a smaller paintbrush because this one is a little bit bigger than I want. And then I'm going to do a little bit on the bottom of the mug here, or the bottom of the handle, and where it attaches in there. So can you see just the little bit of darker kind of on the edges of that mother color? It's not brown, it's not black for the shadows in there, it's that mother color, and that's what starts to have it all come together. It's very similar to the vase over here with a little bit less of the intensity of the color. I'm going to come into this flower a little bit and do the same thing on, I had a little bit too much paint on there. So I kind of kept the center of it the brick red color, and then on the inside, or on the outside edges, then I used a little bit of that mother color. So just for some interest in the stem, I'm going to put a little bit of that mother color. I'm really using it for shadows. And if I felt like I need a little bit more of the brick red, or something else in there, I could do that. I'm going to come around. If you don't feel like your paint is flowing, you can use a little bit of water or a medium to be able to have that flow. Oh, that ends up being a little bit dark. Let me see if I want to soften that a little bit. So I use the mother color on the edge of the saucer, but I feel like that's a little bit dark, so I'm coming back in and just on the edges kind of soften that up a little bit while it's still wet, or add a little bit of water. My paint was pretty dry, so I'm going to come back in with a little bit of the vanilla color. I wanted it to be a little darker on the edges, but not like an outline. I'm going to do a little bit of that in here too. You know, so I have it kind of defined a little bit around in there, but not like an outline. I'm going to do a little bit of this mother color, but not as dark, kind of in the petals, just to define those a little bit. And it's kind of mixing in with the paint that I had for the petals. And so just a couple little lines to like separate out those petals there. So what I like to do kind of once I get to this point, and I still have quite a bit of the vanilla that I'll use and a little bit of the brick red on there that I'll probably do something with. But once I get to this point, what I like to finish with is, I think I might use this one, and I need to sharpen this one, is my brown Stabilo and maybe even a little bit of the black. Because that's what starts to give me like the definition. You could definitely leave your painting like this. And, you know, people who paint, they would do that. I like to use the mixed media, so I come in and I use the Stabilo to kind of define some edges, and I don't know, just add a little bit of, I just kind of went in to just a few places around in here and started on the edge of the stem, just to add like a little bit of definition. And because the Stabilo is more like a pencil, it's picking up still the texture of the watercolor paper, and I like that too. So I'm going to work on just kind of finishing that a little bit, but I want you to just kind of notice how harmonious this is, because I only used 3 colors and the vanilla. And I didn't even use black. I'll use a little bit of black with the Stabilo. But other than, the teacup really kind of stands out because that's the biggest concentration of that periwinkle color. But there are little hints of the periwinkle kind of in other places too, because I had some of the periwinkle on my brush. But I may come back in and put a little bit of that periwinkle, maybe even to kind of pick up in the vase, or, you know, maybe a few highlights in the flower, or just a little bit of that to kind of pull it together, because that's the other way that, like I said, without going into like all the different ways that you can make a painting harmonious, the mother color is one way, and coming back in with the colors that you've already used and putting them in different places is another way to kind of use color to have it all harmonious. So I know that was a little bit longer than I normally do today. So it was more like close to an hour today, but I really wanted to give you kind of almost a start to finish of how you can create a painting with very limited colors and have it be harmonious, have there be a harmony to your painting. So I hope that that was helpful. You can let me know in the comments. And just like always, if you would like to watch the replay of this, or the easiest way to find my whole playlist of the ABCs of Art is on my YouTube channel. And there's a playlist of all of the ones that I've done all year. I actually had somebody reach out last week and just acknowledge that she was just very grateful for these little kind of mini lessons of things, like I said at the beginning, that maybe you aren't learning, you know, when you do a tutorial, when you take a class or something, because these are some of the concepts that I was able to teach at the high school level over an entire semester. And you know, that's hard to do in just a 2-hour paint class to get that kind of depth. So that's the whole purpose of doing the ABCs of art, and just kind of picking some words that I can get a little bit more depth in individually, rather than, you know, inside of a paint class. So I'm going to work on finishing this and adding some details. And I kind of like this idea of this like flower kind of drooping over into the coffee. So I might even like play around with that a little bit. So I hope that you were able to take away something from this, and I will see you back next week for the letter I in the ABCs of art. So I'll see you then.